Hi, church. I'm excited to be with you as we continue to venture through the scriptures. This week, I wanted to start off with a poem by Mr. Rogers entitled I Need You. It is a poem about friendship, about neighbors, and this is what it says. I need you so I can be your neighbor. I need you so I can be your friend. I need you so I can be who I am. Who I am, I'm your friend. You need me so you can be my neighbor. You need me so you can be my friend. You need me so you can be who you are. Who you are, my friend. A bird needs air for its wings to fly. A boat needs water to float. A teacher needs students who want to know why. An election needs a vote. A lining needs a coat. Just as I need you so I can be who I am. You need me so you can be yourself. We both need each other so we can be who we are. Who we are friends. We both need each other so we can be each other's. We can't be each other's friends. We can be each other's friends. I start with this poem because as we look at the letter from 1 Thessalonians chapter 2 verses 9 to 13, there's a sense of the kind of friendship that Paul is painting, that he has with this particular church. And I wonder if any of us have ever experienced just the presence of a friend and how the being with our friends would just completely change everything. To know someone who's with you, for you, and standing alongside you. Recently, we had an opportunity to remember a good friend of mine. He was a professor at a seminary, but unfortunately, he passed away of a heart attack. But as we remember him, some of the memories that I have with him was when we would be in conferences, and I would be in this conference and I would not know anyone, and I would feel kind of strange and very lonely in many ways, just because I don't know anyone. And I would see him. And he would come over and he would stay with me. He would recognize me actually feeling kind of lonely. And he would just be present with me. And he seemed to have that way with all the people that he encounters. That we remember him as someone who stood alongside with and for others. And this is the kind of friends that is being painted in 1 Thessalonians. See, in going back to where 1 Thessalonians come from, we look at Acts chapter 17. This is kind of the origin story of the church in Thessalonica. We hear Paul and his companions kind of going through the city, and they are planting and they were speaking and they are teaching this community. And because of persecution, they actually had to leave and flee. And Paul later on, hearing from some of his disciples about what's happening in Thessalonica, the richness, the robustness, they're growing, they're embodying this good news of Jesus. And he wanted to write a letter, both to encourage, but also to challenge them to continue on this deeper life journey with Jesus. No doubt this is a looking back as he is looking forward. I want to take us in one verse before the passage that we're looking at today, just to set the stage. 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 8, the second part of it, writes, because we love you so much. This is Paul writing. We were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well. He describes the kind of relationship that they've had. When they encountered each other, when they met each other, it was not just this, I am here to give you the good news, but we are actually going to live this life together. We're going to wrestle with the nuances of how the good news begins to shape and transform one another. See, this kind of relationship is mutually blessing, that they're mutually encouraged and challenged. Not only this church, but Paul too as well. And he writes in verse 9, surely you remember, brothers and sisters, our toil and hardship. We work night and day in order not to be a burden to anyone, while we preach the gospel of God to you. You are witnesses, and so is God, of how holy, righteous, and blameless we were among you who believed. Paul reminds the church of Thessalonica. Firstly, this passage talking about not being a burden reveals Paul as a bivocational pastor. He works as a tent maker and he also pastors and preaches, and he did not take from this community. He doesn't want to be a burden. Often this passage gets reduced to that, but there's so much more. Paul is describing how they are witnesses of how God was at work, that as they live this righteous and holy and blameless lives, that this community began to change. It's like their presence and their relationship begins to disrupt all the kind of way of life that they've lived, and they draw them towards the way of Jesus. Rachel Held Evans wrote in her book, A Year of Biblical Womanhood, she said, "It is hard for us to recognize it now, but Peter and Paul were introducing the first Christian family to an entirely new community. A community that transcends the rigid hierarchy of human institution, a community in which submission is mutual and all are free." She is describing how these early churches, as Peter, Paul, Barnabas, and James, as these early apostles, they were out and they were proclaiming, they're embodying this good news. They are challenging the way of life. And it is not just by their words, but how they live together. This formation of something new. These friendship brought about something new. And these friendships, although they are disruptive, they are also drawing. This disruption leads them to closeness. Verse 11, "For you know that we've dealt with each other, each of you as father deals with his own children, encouraging, comforting, and urging you to live lives worthy of God, who calls you into his kingdom and glory." Calls that as a father deals with his own children. That is the metaphor, the picture that Paul paints of the kind of relationship that they ended up having. Not just as friends, not just as co-laborers, but as family. That these friends are so close and so connected to each other. I sometimes see this as the kind of terms of endearment that one gets in their community. Recently, I had an opportunity to hang out with a bunch of people just in the row that we live, and we were just talking and chatting. And somehow the topic have gone into what I do and kind of my roles in the neighborhood. And one of my neighbors says, "Well, you're kind of like a shepherd, right, of this neighborhood?" And I was really moved because that was to me a term of endearment, and it wasn't to belittle or anything, but it's that he sees that part of my role in the community is to tend and to care and to watch over the people. And I wonder for us, what are the terms as we are engaging with our neighbors, our communities, our friends? How do we understand the kind of relationship? Or it could be the other way around, for you to recognize those around us. What role do they play in our lives? Verse 13, Paul says and writes, "And we also thank God continually, because when you received the word of God, which you heard from us, you accepted it, not as human words, but as it actually is, the word of God, which is indeed at work in you who believe." Paul continues to reveal the kind of friendship that they have. That these friendships were not out of just their proximity and social location because they were together. It wasn't because they were doing the same jobs. There was something deeper that over time became the anchor of their relationship. That it is the Word of God. This centrality on Jesus. That Christ is the center, the cornerstone of this friendship. That Paul's relationship with this community, which at one point they had no relationship, but as they continue to deepen this friendship, becoming family, they recognize it is rooted in Jesus. And I love how he writes, "which is indeed at work in you who believe." That the way that Jesus is centered in their lives, maybe it began as just Paul trying to model and live that out. But now, this community, this flourishing community, is also living that out. That it is in their lives that God and Jesus is revealed. This is a friendship in the Word. That the Word becomes the centerpiece of the friendships. As you gather together, I want to encourage you to take time to share with each other. To share with each other stories and places of which you have been a recipient. I started off with the poem by Mr. Rogers of how one needs another. I want you to share with each other those stories where you have needed someone and how God has brought someone that has been disruptive in your life for the better. And out of that disruption, you guys grew deeper. And as you grow deeper, the emergence of that Christ-centered relationship. What did that look like? Who are these people? And what is that disruption like? Share with one another as much as details as you can. And then take time as well to share and pray. Who needs you? Not you as an individual only, but you as a collective, this house community. Who is God inviting you to be that friend for? So I pray you will have a blessed time of conversing together.